Hey there, Braves. I just wanted to drop in and let you know that this assignment is really all about us getting to know each other. And right after this little blurb here is going to be me talking about the assignments and the purpose of it all. And then about 20-some minutes of me talking about myself. If you're not interested in that, I totally get it. Not everybody wants to listen to some dude talk about why his favorite show on TV is Bleach, or why his favorite band is the Dirty Heads. So if you don't want to listen to this dude talk about himself, totally fine. You are welcome to just watch the instructions, get the gist of the assignment, and then move on with your life. However, if you do want to get to know me, well, go on ahead and give it a watch. Hey there, Braves. So I am your new science teacher. I'm either your new gen science teacher or I'm your new biology teacher. And obviously this year is going to be really weird. We're going to be in a hybrid schedule, or we're going to be home all the time, or we might get into the hybrid schedule and then everything gets shut down again. So like most school years, or generally with most school years, I get to see everybody, we get to build relationships, we get to know each other, and that's really what kind of drives our learning. Because you don't want to work for somebody or work with somebody that you don't like and doesn't really care about you, right? So this school year really presents some real challenges, and that's relationship building. It's very, very important. It doesn't matter what job, what you do with the rest of your life. Maybe you're just home for the rest of your life and the only thing you want to do is hang out in your basement and make TikTok videos and play random video games. You still need to have good relationships with the people in your family in order to be able to do that. So life is about building relationships. That's what our species is built on. And in order for us to kind of establish relationships with one another so that we can work together, I have a project for you. I want you to create a video about yourself. Now, this can be a slides presentation on Google that you do a voiceover on, or it can be a legit video like what I'm creating now. Now, obviously, I got this green screen behind me, I've got a camcorder, and I've got a MacBook to edit all of this in Final Cut Pro. I'm not expecting you to go that deep. You're limited to what you have at home. Most likely, most of you probably just have the Chromebook and maybe your phone. So I'm not looking for anything that's super professional quality, but I do want to get to know you. And what I'm going to do with this video, other than kind of describing what I would like to know about you, is let you know a little bit about me. So who am I? Well, my name is Mr. Clemens. You can call me Mr. C if you like. Doesn't bother me either way. And I grew up in Leavenworth and Lansing, Kansas. I was actually born in Panama City, Panama. My dad was an Army Ranger and doing all the things that the military was doing back in 1987, 1988 down there in Panama. You can look that up. Some pretty bad characters that we booted out of there. But when I was about the age of 2, my parents moved me back to their hometown, which was Leavenworth. I eventually went on to go to Lansing schools, so I went to Lansing Middle School and Lansing High School. I graduated in 2006 from Lansing High. Played football, baseball, wrestled, basketball, did it all while I was there. I even got a scholarship to play football, but I decided not to do it because it was in a small university, and looking back on it, it might have been a good idea. But, you know, we all make decisions. We got to live with them. So, anyway, so I grew up basically in Lansing in this whole area. We used to play Bonner Springs in our Kaw Valley League. Bonner Springs used to be a part of the Kaw Valley League along with Piper and Baser, Linwood, Tonganoxie, Lansing, Spring Hill, and like 1 or 2 other teams. I can't remember them all. But all that since broke up, and now those are 2 different separate leagues now. That aside, after I went or graduated from Lansing, I went on to go to K-State for a year. And K-State was a great university. I loved being there. But to be honest with you, it was just too far away from home. I grew up with a very large family. I have 6 different aunts and uncles, and all of them have at least 3 kids. So I had lots of cousins and a big support basically from my mom's side of the family growing up. And when I kind of severed those connections going all the way out to Manhattan, Kansas, It was really rough on me, and I didn't like that so much. I liked being at all the birthday parties and everything else. And also, too, at the time, back in 2006, 2007, there was nothing to do in Manhattan, Kansas, unless you were 21, and which I wasn't. So K-State was kind of a boring place to be at the time. Now, that's since changed. If you want to go to K-State, it's a pretty cool town up there in Manhattan. While I was up there in Manhattan, though, I took up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts. I actually got my blue belt from Combative Sports Center up there. There's Joe the Nose Wilk was my instructor, and he's a second or third degree black belt at this point in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He was under the Gracie Barra system, so direct lineage straight from the Gracies who created the martial art. When I left there, I went to KU, and I finished my bachelor's degree in geology at KU. And while I was there, I started up the KU Jiu-Jitsu Club, and I actually started teaching and coaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I even coached several MMA fighters. Some people you may have heard of, people like Tyler Stenson. Again, you can look that guy up if you want. And I moved on to doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu after college as well. I had a few fights, won them all. I won a lot of competitions. You can see the medals and stuff behind my desk if you ever get a chance to actually come to my classroom in person. And after I graduated, I became a teacher. I actually got my geology degree because I originally went to school for chemical engineering, but decided that was way too much math, and KU was all about the weed out classes, and they certainly weeded me out because I thought I liked math, but I didn't like it as much as I thought I did. So anyways, I moved on to geology, which is the study of Earth, essentially. And that was a lot of fun. In fact, I'll tell you that geology, I had some of the most meaningful and deep and transformative experiences of my life while in the geology program at KU. Number one, you get to build some real relationships with your professors. And because you're 18 all the way up to 22, you're actually having deep conversations oftentimes with your professors, sitting around a campfire, because all the geology stuff you have to go out into national parks and things to go do. So there was a whole lot of camping trips. We actually had a whole field course that lasted 6 weeks where we just traveled all over the western United States and tried to get a feel for the tectonics of our continent here. And we actually got to practice being geologists and all that. And I tell you what, if you like being outside, geology might be something for you. It was awesome. You get to see some of the most beautiful places on the planet, and it's really eye-opening when you get to see just how beautiful our country is. Kansas has some good sunsets. It's got some natural beauty to it, but when you get to go to Utah and Colorado and all the way up to Yellowstone National Park, there's so many beautiful places that you get to see, and those landscapes make you feel very small. And you're out there where there's no lights at night. You look up and you see every single star that our ancestors got to see. And it's one of those things that's very grounding and humbling to be out amongst gigantic mountains and rock layers that took hundreds of millions of years to form and bend and break and do all the things that they do. So geology was a fantastic experience. I took a lot away from that particular degree, from that study. And really, it was awesome. That's where I grew up. That's my education, so to speak. I have a master's degree from Concordia and school stuff, and pedagogy is what it's called. But that's neither here nor there. I think it was in environmental sciences what I minored in for my master's degree. And really it's just a curriculum and instruction degree. So it's a master's, but it's a teaching master's degree. You can't do anything with it except teach, which, hey, lucky for you guys, that's what I'm doing. So anyways, what about some more personal details? Like what makes me me? What are the things I like to do, like to watch, all that stuff? The personality stuff. Well, I absolutely love Japanese anime. Anime is all you have to really say these days because everybody knows what you mean. back in the day you had to specify Japanese anime because no one knew what anime was. I've been watching Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball since I was like this tall, back in 5th grade and up. I used to watch a lot of cartoons before that, before I discovered anime. Loved watching all of the Marvel stuff and Batman from DC and all that, all the cartoons, because that's what they were back then, unless you wanted to watch a really bad Batman movie, which Batman movies suck, let's be honest. Anyways, but no, I absolutely love anime. My favorite anime these days is Bleach, and I discovered Bleach in college, actually, before they turned everything into English. I actually had to jump on YouTube right at its infancy and watch all the subtitles in the Japanese versions of Bleach. And back then, I think they went all the way up to the end of the Espada story arc, and that's as deep as it got. Anyways, point being, I absolutely love anime. Some of the best animes out there: Gundam Wing, Samurai Champloo, Outlaw Star. I just love them. They're phenomenal. And the other things I like to watch on TV are generally things like South Park or Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty is like my favorite, just normal cartoon to watch these days. And really, when it comes to live TV, like live action TV, I just kind of watch whatever's popular, whatever my wife wants to watch, I'll kind of view. To be honest with you, I don't watch a lot of TV. I try to limit that because I have so many things going on. My actual, though, real favorite show to watch that's actual people would be Survivor, and I've been watching Survivor since the beginning, and my wife and I are huge fans. I would love to actually go on the show, but being a teacher, that kind of makes it tough to be gone for like 2 months. But I love that show. It's a very interesting show, especially because I'm interested into psychology and how mind works, how social relationships work, and that game that they have devised is one of the most complex, actual real games that you can play that really opens up the best and worst of people. And so it's a really interesting, if you're interested in psychology and how people work, that's a great show to watch. It really is. So anyways, enough about TV shows. Some of my favorite movies of all time, my favorite movie is The Boondock Saints. And I discovered that one my senior year of high school. And I watched that movie every night for a year. Now, I didn't watch it to completion every night because I'd fall asleep. But I would literally turn that movie on the last hour or so before bed. I would watch that until I passed out, and then wake up the next morning, whatever. So I've seen that movie more than 300 plus times. I absolutely love it, and I still love it to this day. It's still my favorite movie. But my favorite actor is Denzel Washington. So pretty much anything that he's been in, I love to death and will watch over and over again. He's just awesome at everything he does. But growing up, and even still today, my favorite series were Star Wars, Indiana Jones. I even watched a little bit of Star Trek back in the day, The Next Generation, with Captain Jean-Luc Picard. So I'm big into fantasy, I'm big into sci-fi, as you can kind of tell. The Marvel movies, ever since Marvel started doing the live-action stuff, starting with Iron Man and Thor, I have been a huge fan. I've watched all those movies at least 5 times. There's a couple in there like Ant-Man and the Wasp, which are just like, why did they make this? I have no idea. This is but I love the Marvel series. Everything DC tries to do live action pretty much is terrible and horrible, like Batman, Superman. Like, really? You're going to put somebody who's invincible up against some dude? Not happening, right? So, anyways, I'm not a big fan of the live-action DC stuff, except for the Dark Knight series. That was phenomenal. The Dark Knight trilogy was just perfect. And I wish that DC would kind of take a page out of that book and keep going with that, because, man, those were some good movies. But other movies that aren't like sci-fi fantasy, well, I guess, Ex Machina is technically still sci-fi. But Ex Machina was one of the best movies in the last 10 years. That's one of those movies, the first time I watched it, I thought about it for a week. There is just so much going on there, a lot about what our potential future is, all that stuff. And then probably my favorite comedy is The Big Lebowski. I'm a big fan of Billy Madison and all the things that Adam Sandler does, all the things that Seth Rogen does, like This Is the End and Pineapple Express. Those are great movies. They're not serious at all. They're one of those you can just sit back and chill. But I think my favorite comedy overall, the one I can watch the most and still enjoy and laugh, is The Big Lebowski. It's just a super chill movie, and it's just about a guy trying to get his rug back. It's hilarious. So, that's the premise of it. Other things I like in terms of comedy, though, I love watching stand-up. I think Bill Burr is probably the funniest stand-up alive right now. And if you want to check out his specials, there's a lot of expletives, so, if you're in a household that's like, super not any of that stuff, don't watch it with your parents around. But Bill Burr is one of the best. Joe Rogan's hilarious. There's all sorts of great stand-ups. You guys are living in a great time, because it used to be there's like albums that you had to listen to for stand-up comedy. Yeah, I'm old. And now, man, you just got tons of specials on Netflix and Prime, and you guys are lucky. You have no idea how lucky you are. Anyway, so big fan of that stuff. Musically, which is really getting into my personality because I listen to more music than I watch TV. My favorite band of all time at this point is the Dirty Hits. I listen to the Dirty. They're like ska, reggae, rap. I don't know really honestly what you would classify them as. But the Dirty Heads are awesome. I love pretty much every one of their albums. They did one that was a little weird, but they're one of the most creative bands out there. There's never really one album that sounds like another. They always change things up just enough that it's somewhat familiar, but they're breaking new ground. And that's something that you can really appreciate about bands, because one of my other favorite groups, Revolution, you can pick up any one of their albums and it basically sounds like their first album. They've evolved a little bit, but I mean, really honestly, everything has sounded the same. So that's what I really appreciate about the Dirty Heads. And then their style is just, it's aggressive, but then also, too, it's very chill and laid back. I also love Childish Gambino, Donald Glover. In fact, I've been watching things from Donald Glover since he was doing sketches on the internet with his little comedy troupe called Derek Comedy. So I've been following his career, and when he started doing music, man, he has some phenomenal songs. Obviously, Redbone, probably his best work over. You can just keep listening to that song over and over. But other things I like to listen to, one of the most played artists I have on my iPod would be Daft Punk. I've been listening to them since middle school. Great techno band. Anything from the 1960s and 70s in terms of psychedelic rock. So we're talking Pink Floyd, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones. Listen to that stuff, especially in the summer, all the time. If you've never listened to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, I know it's one of those that all the old heads like to talk about, but that is one album that you can listen to front to back, and it is just a masterpiece. So, Pink Floyd is awesome. One of my favorite bands from like middle school up to about college was Flogging Molly. I don't listen to them much anymore, but I used to really dig Irish punk rock and stuff like that, Dropkick Murphys. I don't listen to them as much, but I still have every album that Flogging Molly ever did, so they were great. And another band that I still listen to today from way back in middle school is the Gorillaz. Gorillaz is great. They're still constantly putting out creative content, and that's what I really, again, respect about them, is they're creative. They change things up. Every single album is different, sometimes completely different and a little unpalatable if you're not ready for it. But them and their animation style and all of their music videos is pretty awesome. So Gorillaz is one of my favorites. The one thing I want to mention about music, though, is even though I have my favorite bands, I really don't have a genre of music that I dislike. The only time I really dislike music is when it's overly simplistic. A lot of the stuff that comes out in hip-hop today is fairly simplistic. I mean, the number of overall words used in the songs is very limited. So there's not a lot of creativity, not a lot of thought in some of those songs. Sometimes that's fine. I mean, I'll listen to Rihanna anytime. I mean, she's a great artist. But there are some things that are out now that I don't get. But for the most part, I like basically everything. And I will listen to basically everything, from classical to country to rap or hip-hop to, you name it. I like it. I even like sitting around listening to like Chinese like sitar and stuff, man. So music for me, on my computer alone, I have over 10,000 songs that I've bought or downloaded over the last 10, 15 years. So I just have a massive music library, and now you can just stream everything. But I just enjoy music. Other things that I listen to, so when I started off with like TV shows, which I barely watch, to movies, which I watch a little bit more, to music, which I listen to a lot. And then when it comes to what I spend most of my free time doing, it's listening to podcasts. So I'm one of those people who wants to know everything. I don't care what it is. Everything's kind of interesting to me. I shouldn't say that. I don't want to be a makeup artist, but you get what I'm saying. I'm one of those people who just want to know how everything works. I love science. I love history. I used to like politics, but man, it's kind of it's a dumpster fire these days. But I like to listen to things like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's great. Maybe that makes me a Bisco boy. I don't know. But Rogan's fantastic because he has a wide variety of guests, and you get to listen to him for 3 hours at a time. So you can get deep into subjects. And you just don't get that from CNN or from your other more normal media channels. You actually get to really understand a subject and dissect it, and that's what I think is brilliant about Rogan's podcast. I don't listen to everything he does, but I've been listening to him since the beginnings, and he's done like 1,600 podcasts at this point. So I've probably listened to Joe Rogan talk more than any other human being on the planet. But anyways, other podcasts I like to listen to, there's The Portal, which is by Eric Weinstein. He's a mathematician, super brainy dude. Some of those podcasts I'm just like lost in because he's talking to other scientists and they're using terminology that I've never heard before. But he's also a deep thinker I like to listen to. Same thing with the Artificial Intelligence podcast by Lex Friedman. He really goes into the nitty-gritty of technology. If you're interested in AI, if you're interested in robotics, if you're just interested in computers in general, great one to listen to. Really, really deep stuff, and a lot of stuff that's more into futurism, like where are we going, where will we be in 10 years. Science Friday is always fun. It's kind of turning into a political podcast, so I don't listen to that as much as I used to. But Radio Lab is great, really high production quality, really interesting podcast about all sorts of different subjects. Other things like Star Talk Radio, again, another one of those fun, lighthearted podcasts about a wide variety of science topics. And for my more serious stuff, I already mentioned The Portal and the Artificial Intelligence podcast, but I also love listening to Hardcore History by Dan Carlin. I'm telling you, you want to learn about the Khans, like Genghis Khan, and his destructive wave across half the planet. He's killed more people. He killed something like 10% of the Asian population. Great, phenomenal podcast from him. World War I, even talking about the war between the United States and Japan in World War II, the whole Pacific theater. Has a great series on him. And he really brings him to life. It's like your perfect history teacher. And then Dr. Jordan Peterson's podcast, which is a psychology-based podcast, is also great. I love listening to that. I've heard all of his episodes, and it's a very intriguing podcast. It's a lot about the inner workings of the mind, how to improve yourself, where your pitfalls are, and all that. So I love those podcasts, and that's, again, what I spend most of my time doing. If I have a free moment or if I'm working on something, I'm generally listening to some dude or some person, random person, talking in my ears. So that's kind of my interests and all that. So my family, when I go home, who do I see? I'll start off with pets. I have a cat named Hampton. He's in the top corner of your screen, the top left corner of your screen. He's a gray tabby. And then Jasmine, she is a tuxedo cat, as you can see. She's a ninja. She sharpens her claws, so sharp that she can literally rip paper down just like a knife. Just brrr, scary cat. And she uses those claws. She's very scary. My dog, which is Colby, he's a min pin. Had him for about 6 years. Great little dog. yappy dog, as you can tell. And then my wife, Diana, which we got married back in 2012. So we've been married for 8 years. We met in college, and I think we've been together for 12 years or so. So we had 2 kids, and my 2 kids are Michaela. She just turned, well, she's 3.5 now, just starting preschool. And my son, Declan, who is going to turn 1 on August 31st. So he got there exactly on his due date, and right before he became a September baby. So those are my kids. They've been keeping me incredibly busy the last 6 months. In fact, I am so happy to be in my classroom right now. You have no idea how happy I am to be back at work. You would think 6 months off would be fun, but when you aren't really progressing in life, you kind of lose sight of your purpose. And purpose is what drives us, is what keeps us happy. And when you're not constantly accomplishing something meaningful, well, depression and all of those things set in. And I'm telling you what, man, it was becoming a humdrum existence. So thank goodness I'm back here in front of you guys talking in your ears. Some of the things I like to do are learning, as you found out with the podcast, learning about history, science, technology, and again, trying to figure out just kind of how this world works and is put together and who our ancient ancestors are and all of that stuff. I love gardening and landscaping. My first job was mainly landscaping. I learned a lot from that, and then ended up becoming, well, a garden science teacher for a good long while. I have a big garden in my house, do a lot of permaculture is what it's called, so grapes and cherries and berry plants and all that stuff is all over my house, or my yard. I love cooking, grilling, and smoking things. I cook every single meal that I eat for the most part, and I love smoking myself some ribs and some pork butt and all of that stuff. So especially this time of year, man, it's a great time to get that apple wood or that pecan wood out and start smoking a dead piece of animal. Wonderful stuff. As I kind of mentioned before, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mixed martial arts is a hobby of mine. I haven't been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu very much in the last 3 years. Obviously, having a little one at home, I can't sneak out for 2-3 hours at a time to get that done. My wife also needs help with the little guys, the little critters. So I've taken a back step on that, but I was planning on getting back into it this summer if it wasn't for COVID. But anyways, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, man, that's where it's at for me. I got all the way up to a 2nd degree black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and then when I stepped over to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu side, I got all the way up to purple belt, was winning all sorts of competitions, and then obviously again had my daughter, and that's kind of put a wrench in my plans for continuing training. A lot of the guys that were at my level 3-4 years ago are now black belts, so that's where I should be right now, and it's really bothering me that they all went up and I've stayed down here. I'm not jealous by any means, but I'm more disappointed that I haven't been able to keep at it. I love gaming. In fact, the great thing about new technology today is, especially with that Nintendo Switch, I got a full system at my thumbs, and I can do that in bed. I can do that hanging out on the couch. I can do that in a hammock. And I've put 400 plus hours into Breath of the Wild. So Zelda Breath of the Wild is probably the greatest game ever created, in my opinion. And I've played a lot of games in my time. So other games that I really enjoy recently, the newer ones, things like The Witcher. The Witcher 3 was a great game. All the DLC content was fantastic. Skyrim. I love that game. In fact, before Breath of the Wild came out, Skyrim was my favorite game. But, if you ever want to have a discussion what Bethesda's doing wrong, we can have that discussion. But basically, Breath of the Wild really just, totally showed them up. Perfect combat system, perfect, free reign of a large world. Anyways. And then, Smash Bros. One of my favorite games from back in the day. All the updates have been great. I still play the 64 Smash Bros, but the latest one is a really good version of it. Problem is, it's hard to get a bunch of 30-somethings, my friends, over to my house to just simply play video games. So I don't play Smash Bros as much as I used to. but I used to be expert level. Let's let me put it that way. Last thing to mention about myself, I became a Freemason last summer, and I recently this winter became a Master Freemason, which is the 3rd degree. And I bring this up, you know, the Freemasons are a charitable organization, but it's not just a charitable organization. It's about self-improvement. If you're interested in that, just ask. Anyways, so that's basically me in a nutshell. That was a long video, I'm sure, but that gives you an idea of what I'm looking for. So you don't have to create a 20-minute video about yourself. It's not what I'm looking for you to do. Just pick a couple of things. I went through that long list of different topics to kind of show you that there's a lot about yourself that you can talk about. Things you're interested in, things that you like to do, things you'd like to create. Like for me, for instance, I don't plan on teaching until retirement. I actually plan on getting out of education in 5 to 10 years so that I can go start my own orchard and start making wines. And not just an orchard, not just a vineyard, but also an orchard, growing peaches and things like that. So that's what I would like to do in the future, as well as also get a doctorate in psychology. And so there's a lot of things I want to do with those last 30, 40, maybe 50 years of my life if I'm lucky. So what are you interested in? What do you want to become? That's what I want to know about you. What makes you you? I know it's not the ideal way for us to establish relationships and get to know each other, but hopefully it's good enough. So go on ahead and use whatever tools are at your disposal. Like I said, if you need to, you can use Google Slides and just do a voiceover there. If you have a tripod or you have just your phone, right? Use your phone camera. You can do something with that to put together a video. But really, I just want to know what you look like. Like, it's good to know, who I'm talking to. So give me at the very least, give me a photo, a headshot of who you are. No creepiness here. Just want to know who it is that I'm working with. And I think you kind of want to know who you're working with too, right? So, yeah, that's the assignment. Have at it.